What did you expect, though, in terms of, like, once you got inside, you had to appoint all these people?
Yeah.
Like, how many appointments did you have to make?
Well, you have actually
10,000
appointments. Now, they're different. You have big ones, and then they appoint 100 people and 200 people. But the president really is involved with approximately 10,000 appointments. So you'll appoint a Secretary of State, and he or she will appoint a lot of people. So it's a lot. But in terms of major ones, you probably have like 100, but they're big ones. Treasury, state, military.
And how did you know who to appoint?
Well, I didn't. I had no experience. You have to understand.
So
I was there 17 times in Washington, and I never stayed over. According to the press, which I think is probably right, over the years, I was only there 17 times. I never stayed over. So now I'm sitting there, I'm saying, this place is gorgeous, but, I don't know anybody. It's like you go to certain areas, and other areas, they may be great. Washington was great. Washington's not so great right now. We got to fix it. We got to make it better. A very dangerous place, very badly maintained place. We're going to make it great. We're going to make it better. We're going to bring it back. But I wasn't a Washington guy. I was a New York guy. I was a New York builder, and I built buildings in New York, and I knew that whole world, but I didn't know the Washington world too well. And all of a sudden, you're supposed to be appointing top people. So,
what did you think it was going to be like? Versus, like, did you have any ideas of what it was going to be like, and what was different?
Well, I was always involved in politics, but usually from the standpoint of a donor. I was a donor. I was a big donor. I gave money to politicians. I enjoyed politics.
Mostly Democrats, right?
Both, really, pretty much both. I have actually pictures of Ronald Reagan and me when I was very young.
You were a Democrat until, like, what year?
I was a Democrat. I could get you the exact, but the early 90s. The early 90s. I switched over eventually. Actually, they had a reform party. I was thinking about doing that for a little while, but then fortunately I didn't because it's very hard. It's a two-party system. And anytime you hear third party, I know you like RFK Jr., and so do I. He's a fantastic guy.
I do, but I thought that being an independent was nonsense.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work because even if you do great, you're not going to get Congress. In other words, you need now to say, okay, now I'll get half of Congress. They're never going to vote for you. So even if you got there, which is very hard, and I know how you feel about Bobby, and I feel the same way, and he's now with us. But it doesn't. It's pure and simple. It's a two-party system.
Right.
And somebody, I won't mention his name, but somebody spent $250 million trying to get the nomination as a Reform Party candidate or whatever, and they got just nowhere. You get eaten. You just get eaten. The system eats you alive.
Right.
So it was really somebody that not only was new to Washington but was new to politics. So in the office of the presidency, over the years, all those presidents, you've had 92% were politicians and 8% were generals. General Eisenhower, General Washington, right? General George Washington, you had generals. So it's 8%, no admirals, 8% generals and 92% politicians. They're politicians and they go in. So they never had a business guy or they never had a guy that wasn't elected to an office. They were all like Ronald Reagan he was a movie actor, but he became the governor of California for, I think, 2 terms, and then he ran. So you never had a thing like this. But in terms of me, and sometimes I use it as an excuse, and I don't like having excuses actually, but I use it as an excuse. I had to rely on people that I respected or liked, but that I didn't know that well because I didn't know them that well. Some of those people I campaigned against because, when you have 18 people, we had mostly politicians running in the election, running in the primaries, and they got knocked out one by one, but I got to like some of them. Some of them I didn't like at all, and I don't like them now. And I'd rely on them, and I'd rely on other people. So all of a sudden, people would come in, I'd like to recommend so-and-so to be Secretary of State, and I'd have 3-4 people recommend. One thing I can tell you is everybody wants the position.
Of course.
No, but sometimes I'll hear a lot of people don't want to work with Trump because Trump is tough to work with, et cetera. Let me tell you, everybody wants to be any one of these positions. They die for it.
Of course.
Now, they don't want to be known. I mean, there's a particular guy in New York, primarily, very big, very successful, very strong, very political, although he's not a politician. He'd give anything to be Secretary of State, but if they ask him, no, I don't think I would do it. But in the meantime, begging for it, okay, begging. I believe you. Everybody wants it.
But by
the way, no matter what you do, but it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous because all of a sudden they get checked up, and you hear things that you say, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. Picking people that are outside of politics is somewhat dangerous.
So you're kind of stuck in a position where you have to pick established people. And then the problem with established people is established people are already indoctrinated into the system.
And they're stiffs in many cases. They're survivors. I find that,
What do you mean by stiffs? When you say stiffs?
A stiff, they don't have nothing. They have nothing. Or they're smart and survive. One little thing. So there was a congressman years before I ran, and I was very close to him. And I needed a license on something, and he was very important in getting the license. But it was a little bit controversial, the license, this particular thing that was being licensed. But I was close to this guy and helped him and everything else. And I went to him, I said, I'd like to have your help. And he said, let me take a look at it. I said, oh, that's not too good, but I really hope you're going to help. Anyway, he tapped me along for a long period of time and ultimately didn't do it. And I said, you are a stiff. You could have done this thing so easy, et cetera. But it was controversial. He was in Congress for many years, like 28 years. And, there's a reason when somebody's there for 28 years, you got to be sort of smart.
Right.
You have all the scandals. And I realized he was a survivor.
And so they never do anything controversial. They never take any chances or speak their opinion. It's outside of the...
Yeah. And yet I don't disrespect him for it. So I actually respected the guy more in a certain way. I said,
he did survive.
You know what? He's been there like for 28 years, And he made it through. A lot of people don't make it through.
It's a good way for non-exceptional people to survive.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is.
So you're in there. You have 10,000 appointments you have to make. Like, so you're getting advice from people. And at one point in time, did you have a moment in time where you realized like these are bad choices? Like some of these people I shouldn't have had in there.
Oh yeah, I think so. The one question that you'll ask me, that I think you'll ask me, that people seem to ask, and I always come up with the same answer. The one mistake, because I had a lot of success, great economy, great everything. Everything was great. The military, we rebuilt it, biggest tax cuts in history, all this stuff. We had a great presidency. 3 Supreme Court justices. Most people get none. You know, you pick them young. This way they're there for 50 years, right? So, you know, even if a president is there for 8 years, oftentimes they never have a chance. I had 3. It was sort of the luck of the draw. But I will say that it always comes back to the same answer. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, you know, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
Neocons?
yeah, neocons, or bad people, or disloyal people, or
People that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
you got bad advice.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're reading about him a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who was a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But you know, he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I go in with a guy like a John Bolton. You know John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton, and he's a very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. You know, he's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? You know, good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy, and one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now, he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, "He's a bad guy. It always works out bad with that guy." And I said, "Oh, man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. You know, he's here." And he was right. But he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job. And every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh, man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East. They should have never done it. I used to say it as a civilian. So I